Welcome to Life of a Dad. Today's episode we're going to focus on dealing with trauma. What can I say? I think most people, when they've got trauma, I think most people can't relate to them. Trauma comes in all different forms, and I think it's important not to focus on the specific cause of the trauma, but how you deal with trauma in general. So first of all, we'll talk about what types of trauma there are. So we all make decisions in life, and they might result in a significant life-changing issue. So we might drive a car too fast, have an accident, kill somebody. I know it sounds quite dramatic, it's trauma. We might have an accident, chop our arm off, lose a leg, it's trauma. These are quite severe trauma, they might not be as severe as that in my own particular situation. Don't mind sharing it, but as a young adolescent I was quite conscious of my appearance. That led to me taking a drug called Roaccutane for acne, and if you Google what Roaccutane does to people, it causes significant and permanent changes in both the brain makeup and serotonin and various other things. And some trauma in life can change you forever, and I think it's important to realise that sometimes you have trauma. It could be, for example, taking a recreational drug, and even if you only do it once, the way the brain works, it's so finely tuned. The way I can explain the brain is that it's like full of like tiny watch springs, and if you overload a watch spring and you pull it too tight, it will never work the same again. And so you've got to be really careful, that you don't subject yourself to unnecessary trauma, by letting curiosity, get the better of you in terms of taking recreational drugs. If it's a trauma where it's an accident, you lose an arm or a leg, then that's just unfortunate, and we need to deal with it. So the important thing is, how do we deal with trauma? And I think there's two ways. One, you can seek guidance and advice from people who've experienced that trauma. The other thing that you can do is obviously try and speak to someone like Frank or the Samaritans. You've got to be really careful though that when you've got trauma, that you don't blow it out of proportion, go down a rabbit hole, try and solve it. Sometimes you've got rational and irrational thoughts. Now, if it's an irrational thought, I'm scared of eyes, that's ridiculous, or I'm scared of like spiders or whatever, then when that thought comes into your mind, you need to let that go. But if it's a rational thought, then yeah, it may take some processing, and processing can take time. So I think it's important to remember that no matter how bad you feel today, in time you won't feel that bad. But all we can do really is, by putting good practices in place, is try and speed that time up. Some things just need to run the course. You need to exhaust them, explore them, and eventually you'll reach a conclusion. But for some things in the universe, there just aren't answers or solutions to the problem, and sometimes you've just got to let go, and that's just the way it is. So in order with trying to speed up in the time in which we can heal from trauma, then there's only one way to deal with it, and in my opinion that's about putting robust practices in place. So it's important that we look at how much sleep we're getting. It's important that we try and work to a proper circadian rhythm, that we're getting in bed for 10 o'clock, lights out, and we're up at 6 o'clock. We get a good solid 8 hours minimum every single day. It's important that we control what we're eating. These are quite big topics, and you can probably do an episode on each one. But with regards to eating, I'll keep it simple. Don't be eating any processed foods. Try and stick to whole foods if possible, and try and control what you eat. Take some control over it, and if you start putting healthy things in, you should start feeling better. Going back to the sleep, again, it's about getting in bed in the right frame of mind to go to sleep. So that involves not being on a screen before you go to sleep. Try and read a book, for example, or do something where you're not stimulating those brain cells via a display. So we've talked about sleep, we've talked about eating, training. It's so important that if you feel good about yourself, when you train, then you're going to start feeling better. But not only that, when you do train, it produces serotonins and endorphins, and all these things are similar to what you get, for example, when you buy a nice car, or you're experiencing something nice, you feel good about yourself. So get yourself in the gym and get a regular routine in place. Try and find a job that suits you. Try and find a life partner that suits you. If you want a life partner, if you don't, then that's not a problem. But try and put things in place that will make you feel better. And sometimes it might just be a case of knocking the trauma into the rough and giving yourself enough time to heal. Things do take time. The only thing I would say is, I went through a difficult 10-year process of wanting other people to fix my problems. Now you see this in children that have been loved and and protected from trauma. As adults, we try and make sure that our children have as easy as life as possible. We do everything for them. But what that doesn't do, it doesn't give them the tools they need to solve a problem when it occurs. So rather than having an issue at 7 and 8 years old with dysfunctional parents, you might have to cook the food, manage the bank accounts, do all them at a very young age, then when you get to adult life, problems aren't an issue. But when you've had parents do those jobs for you and then you get a bit older, then things then become a problem. They can be blown out of proportion. So I think it's important to remember that trauma is part of growing up, it's part of life. Whether it occurs through taking recreational drugs, or whether it occurs through an accident or whatever else, you can get over it and you can do it yourself. I would strongly avoid medication. All medication does really is it's a crutch, and at some point you're going to need to come off it, and when you come off it you're going to need to face the trauma again. So it's really important that you try and deal with the trauma initially. I understand some people aren't strong enough, and medication might give them time to get to that point, but I would strongly advise against medication and try all the other avenues first before you do it. And finally, like I said, the only person that can help you with your mental well-being is you. Nobody else can get into your brain, nobody else can manage it, and sometimes it's about owning the responsibility of the trauma and putting things in place to try and resolve it. I hope that helps.